Hello, my name is Gene Montrastelli, and I am the editor of TappingQA.com. And the video that you are about to watch is an interview that I did as part of the 24 Hours of Tapping. The 24 Hours of Tapping was a free event, which was a fundraiser for the Peaceful Heart Network. The Peaceful Heart Network provides training and trauma relief tools to those in war-torn countries, as well as working with refugees all over the world. They've been able to help out over 200,000 people all over the world. After you watch this video, if you find this video something that was useful, the very easy way that you can say thank you to the guest for giving their time and sharing their expertise is to go to 24hoursoftapping.com/support and make a small contribution to support the Peaceful Heart Network. Again, that is 24hoursoftapping.com/support, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Our next guest is Sebastian Van Der Scheuer. Seb is a coach who is versed in multiple healing models that include EFT, Pro-EFT, matrix reimprinting, NLP, among other things. He first discovered self-help when he was 16 years old, which he studied and applied intensely as he was struggling with social anxiety disorder. It was only once he discovered EFT that he made significant progress, and he now specializes helping others overcome social anxiety. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to share the conversation that I had with Sebastian about social anxiety, about how to clear it, and about his personal experience with that. So here is my conversation with Seb. The question that I've been starting out a lot today with folks is people's origin stories. So I am curious, how did you get into a circumstance where you got really interested in social anxiety, trying to transform social anxiety and wanting to help other people with that?
How much time do you have, Gene? Because I'll give you the short version.
Great.
So I had very bad social anxiety, and that started when I was 11 or 12. And before that, I didn't have that problem. I was actually very outgoing and confident, arrogant. Yeah. And it started at 12, got progressively worse. And then at 16, when girls came into the picture, it got even worse. And at 12, I started blushing, and that it was combined with that.
Yeah.
And eventually, I'm like 17 or 18 years old and can't get a girlfriend to save my life. And I found an online community that teaches you how to pick up girls, basically.
Right.
And in there, a lot of the things that were suggested, I don't particularly recommend at this point.
Right. Yeah.
But let's be clear about that. But one of the things that was very helpful was there's also a part of that movement that focuses on the inner psychology. And they're like, if you get your inner psychology in order, then you're just an attractive person. And from that place, dating and that kind of stuff becomes a lot easier.
Right.
And the techniques that they suggested just didn't work very well. So affirmations, visualizations, and basically facing your fears, forcing yourself to do the things that you're afraid of. And I had massive social anxiety, and just the thought of these things would freak me out. I would blush whenever I'd become the center of attention. If someone would say, "You're blushing," I would blush. If I would do something wrong, I would blush. I was afraid when new people would enter the picture. There were situations in which I was comfortable, but there were a lot of situations that triggered anxiety, and there was like a constant just fear going on. I'm going a little bit into the pain of the problem because this was a really significant problem. And the people that I tend to work with are more on the side of really bad social anxiety, which I had as well. Anyway, I did maybe like 4 or 5 years of personal development. So starting at age 17, and did lots of things. Nothing really worked. And then eventually I found tapping. And it was a video by a guy who said, well, it often works where nothing else works, and just try it. And I thought, this must be a scam. This can't be for real, right?
Right.
But I did my research because I actually tried it and it didn't work. And I did my research and still I couldn't get it to work. Went to a forum, asked, hey, is this for real? Lots of people talked about, well, yes, it is for real. Got the DVD, saw the transformations on screen. And I'm like, this has to work for me.
Right.
And then eventually I got it to work with a workshop participant, with a workshop leader when I did an EFT workshop here in the Netherlands. And he had me talk about how I didn't have a girlfriend or something around those lines in front of other people. And now the blushing actually got triggered in the moment. He's like, now start tapping. Yeah. And then as I started tapping, I felt that stuff was shifting. And then afterwards I could talk about it. And it was like, you know, like I was talking about brushing my teeth. I was just neutral, and I'm like, oh my God, this change. And from then I was sold. And, you know, that's a long time ago now.
Yeah. I mean, you know my story as well. Like, that's the way I found my way to tapping as well. Like, I could stand on stage in front of 8,000 people and I couldn't answer my own phone. I couldn't ask for help in a store. You talk about blushing. My family actually had a game growing up where they tried to get my ears to turn red because when I blushed, it wasn't just here, it was everything.
Wow.
And so I know what that space is like. So now that you had that personal experience, you've had the opportunity to not just look at it from the point of view of someone who's trying to create a little transformation in their own life to make some things easier, but now being in a circumstance where you've like dedicated your work to like truly trying to help people with this particular way. I mean, on a couple occasions, I've been lucky enough to work with your confidence club and work with your folks and do that sort of stuff. So now that you recognize it works in this way and you have some experience, is there a systematic approach or thoughts, or like as you're leaning into this, someone goes, oh my gosh, I have social anxiety, I think tapping is useful. What are the steps that someone goes through in a way to actually not have to like poke around having all the false starts that you had?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, it actually is a complex issue. So in most cases, it's a complex issue. And when I first came up with a system, I had an 18-step system in order to.
It was like this flow chart, right? I think I remember seeing all the graphs and the drawing at some point. I think you shared that with me. Yeah.
Right. And I just mind mapped everything out the other day. And again, it's a big mind map. But a bunch of years ago, I discovered, okay, actually there's 3 main things that I'm constantly doing with my clients. And these are the 3 steps, the 3 main keys to overcoming social anxiety. And that is 1, achieving acceptance, 2, neutralizing resistance, and 3, just working through the actual triggers.
Okay.
So real brief about each. In order to overcome acceptance, you need to come to terms with it. And that's a very challenging thing to do.
And what do you mean by acceptance? Like, let's define that term for me so you can talk to me like why it's hard then.
Sure. Well, for a lot of people that suffer with significant anxiety, the anxiety symptoms themselves at some point become linked as a threat, but it's subconscious. So you notice your heart is starting to race and you're like, oh my God, I'm getting anxious. And that thought then triggers even stronger fight, flight, freeze response. And you just keep looping.
Gotcha.
And so you need to accept that. And then
when you say accept the fact that I'm anxious and it's not the end of the world, or what am I accepting at that spot?
Well, you're accepting what is. You're dealing with this particular problem. Yep. And you're always, you're never going to like it. Sometimes people think like, oh, well, when I accept it, then I like it. No, you still don't like it. You're still going to do whatever you can to overcome it. You still don't improve it. But hey, this is what I'm dealing with now. And part of that is also a lot of compassion. You have to understand that, hey, what you're dealing with is suffering. This is really hard, and it comes from somewhere. Because a lot of people are judging themselves. Oh, this means that I'm weak and I'm a loser because of this, and I'm so pathetic, and all of that just exacerbates the problem. So now you don't just have social anxiety. No, you're also beating yourself up about it. Gotcha. And you feel like a loser because of it, and it just keeps you a lot more stuck. So
and so you say that it reminds me of two things. The first is Milton Erickson, the hypnotist, said that all transformation starts by stating what is. And that's what you're saying here is the first thing is we just need to be honest about what is going on. The second thing I find a lot is that oftentimes I am tapping on the emotion about the issue before I'm tapping on the issue itself.
Right.
And so almost like what you're describing here is the social anxiety is the gooey center of a piece of candy, and the beating myself up and thinking I'm a loser and thinking I'm broken becomes a hard candy shell, which actually makes it hard for me to get to the root of the cause, because now I've exacerbated this by multiplying the issue by adding all of this other negative emotion on top of it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Exactly.
Excellent. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So as you're approaching that, other than what I just shared there, like how specifically do you like to do that with clients then?
Well, this is a period over, or this is a process over a longer period of time. But like at its core, for example, is you have the problem, is like you said, the inside of the candy, and then there's your thoughts and feelings, or maybe more specifically, your emotions and your negative judgments towards the problem. But there are only so many. Like there's shame about the fact that you're dealing with social anxiety. There's frustration. There is anger about it maybe. There's the worry that you'll never overcome it. That exacerbates the problem. And there are judgments. Well, this means that I'm a loser. This means that I'm this, that, and the other. And by shifting that around, you move into greater and greater levels of acceptance. And that is something that you do in order to decrease the suffering while you're still dealing with the problem.
Gotcha.
And then as you're still, so it's not like, okay, I do this once and I've got acceptance for the rest of my life, but because you'll go out and you get triggered and some of the feelings will come back, but it's like what you say, they're more proportionate rather than that they're, overwhelming and really keep you stuck. So.
And one of the things that I want to highlight in what you're saying here is that this idea that it's something that takes time. Like I think we're really fortunate in the tapping community where we're spending a lot less time talking about 1-minute miracles and 1-session miracles. And it's this really powerful tool, but we're like, the experience that you had, the experience that I had, it wasn't like this one thing. It was knit into the fabric of who we are. Yeah. And so it takes time for us to do that. And so I think it's really good that you're normalizing the fact that it's a process and it's okay. It's a process because it's possible for me to beat myself up and going, I'm doing transformation wrong because this is taking so long. So I have this thing, then I have all of the emotion about it. Then I beat myself up because the process isn't working the way that I want it to, and we're compounding it. And so I really appreciate the fact that you're saying this is something that can take time and to normalize that particular part of the experience.
And that's an interesting thing that you say, because when I just learned about the tapping, I was thinking like, oh man, I got to get over this real quick. I then realized that for me, that wasn't the case. But once I became a practitioner, I was like, oh man, I'm supposed to get my clients done with this problem in a session or in 3 sessions. And it took a whole bunch of years before I actually managed to have a client that was done with social anxiety in 3 sessions. Right. And now I've been doing this for 12 years. I haven't had a single client. Well, that's not true. 2 sessions once. But that's more, a smaller percentage of the people. The bigger percentage of the people, it's a longer period of time because there are so many triggers that are there. Yeah. But it can typically improve quite quickly. Because if you're in a real,
and that's the other thing I think it's really important to highlight with transformation is transformation's not an all or nothing proposition. Like I'm dealing with social anxiety. I remember years and years ago, I got an email from a client and all the email said was, I made 3 phone calls today. And I started to cry because that was such a heroic change for her in her life. And we were so far from being done with that sense of insecurity in the world. But all of a sudden, her world opened up because there was an activity that she couldn't do that now she could do that was going to make her life so much easier. Yeah. And so it takes time, but it doesn't mean we wait to the end of that time to see the fruit of the work that we're doing, because it's like, I'm comfortable saying hi, I'm comfortable having a conversation, I'm comfortable talking to a total stranger, and like it's almost like our world just keeps getting a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger as it's becoming safer.
Yeah, and this is what I always say to them: it's like, look, if you want to feel really bad, think about where you want to be and notice how far you still have to go.
Right.
Or look at where you were 6 months ago and look at where you're at now. And then you can see, hey, I'm making progress. This is getting better. And I remember you interviewed, now I hope I'm not butchering this, but I think it was Mari Ayers, about the ways to measure progress. And it's a very good way, at least for the anxiety, frequency, intensity, and duration of anxiety. The difference between getting triggered. You want to go into it?
No, I mean, you're doing great.
Like if you get triggered 20 times a week, it's a very different experience than when you get triggered 10 times a week.
Yeah.
And if anxiety shows up for you and you freak out about it, you're upset about it, you're bummed out about it, you leave the social situation, you beat yourself up for the whole evening, you wake up, you think back to yesterday, how horrible it was, and you're still beating yourself up. That's an experience. Or you get triggered and it's done and over with in minutes. That's a huge difference. And then the intensity, do you get triggered at a 9 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10? So all of that kind of continuously improves. Now those are not the only markers, because this is specific to anxiety, because anxiety is kind of like a symptom of a deeper problem. Also other things, other areas start to improve: your self-esteem, your level of self-acceptance, just how you are in the world and that kind of stuff. But yes, it's a process, but it's deep.
Yeah.
It's rich.
So once we get to the point of we start with the sense of accepting where we are, dealing with the emotion that's around that particular piece. You said there were 3 parts. The second part was resistance. What was the second part? I think you said resistance.
Second part is neutralizing resistance.
Okay.
And so I started as a practitioner 12 or 13 years ago, and I had a supervision session with Lindsay Kenny, EFT Master Lindsay Kenny, and she talks about subconscious resistance to change. I really, really like that. And it made such a huge difference in my work with clients. Then I also observed how Carol Look always talks about there's a downside to letting go of this problem, or there's an upside, a benefit to holding on to this problem, right? I mean, she hasn't invented that necessarily, but a lot of people talk about that. And so how I have since come to experience the work is that there is general subconscious resistance to change, and there is specific resistance to change. Specific resistance meaning there is a specific reason for why some part of you doesn't want to change. So I have social anxiety and I want to be socially at ease, but there's a part of me that expects that I'll then have even more judgment or even more expectations. And so it's painful. So that's the downside. So that's specific resistance. And then general resistance is subconscious likes to keep things the same.
Yeah.
So that that general resistance is an ongoing thing that needs to be cleared over and over because you keep changing. But it's done real quick in like a minute. The specific resistance, once you uncover a particular reason for why you don't want to change, it's typically something irrational. Like, for example, I'll be judged even more. Well, part of social ease is that you accept judgment. So once that reframe lands and that pain association is gone, then that specific resistance is neutralized. It's not there anymore. So there's a finite amount of specific resistances that you can run into. If that makes sense.
And I really appreciate the way you've articulated that, because everything that you say there about this idea of the general resistance, because the subconscious mind wants the predictable. The subconscious mind will choose the predictably bad over the unpredictable because I can at least manage the predictably bad. And this idea of specific resistance, like I tap on both of those things all the time with my clients, but I've never actually like thought about them in that way and creating those two separate categories to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is when we're tapping on our own or we're tapping with a client, it gives us this two-pronged approach to look at what the resistance is going on. Is it just the intrinsic, I am human, therefore I don't want to change? Or is it the, this is the specific bad thing that happens if I change? Either I lose something that is good or I gain something that is bad. And by having that and like giving ourselves permission to tap on both of those things separately, or at least think about both of those things when we're tapping, I can see just unlocking stuff so much quicker. And so I love the taxonomy of separating resistance in that particular way. Like, even though I know that intrinsically, I've never thought about breaking them down in that way. So I think that's really, really useful.
Nice. Good.
So then, and like for most of us who are tappers, we're familiar with finding those individual instances, memories in the past, specific stuff, that sort of stuff. So that makes sense. So then what is the third part then after we go from dealing with the acceptance, finding the places of resistance, and the third step is
neutralizing social anxiety triggers, the actual problem.
Yeah.
So social anxiety is the result of your brain perceiving some kind of threat, and that then activates the fight, flight, freeze response. Your heart starts to race, you get the lump in your throat, your pupils dilate, etc. We've labeled that anxiety. And so then the solution is to neutralize that perception of threat so that the fight, flight, freeze doesn't get activated. So there are particular things that trigger that, you know, and it's three things. It's beliefs, it is negative fantasies, and it is negative memories. So there are
beliefs, negative fantasies, and negative memories. Okay, great.
Exactly. And I used to, all the way back, I thought it was just memories, you know. Then I learned some more. I'm like, oh, actually, it's beliefs and memories. And then eventually it's actually also these negative fantasies that we have, these negative projections. So I wrote a whole article on that, and when it's an important article, I have it proofread by David Lake, who's a therapist, long time, and he talks about, well, there are also micro triggers, but these are the big guns, basically.
Yeah.
The memories, fantasies, and beliefs. And so then a simple way to work with this is to simply look at when you're being triggered. And then, I mean, this is very standard. Last time it happened, imagining as if, or future time. So picking your biggest trigger or a particular trigger, tuning into it, and then just seeing what there is, and then just working through it. That is kind of what I teach people for self-work. So it's a very simple process to go about that. And then when I hand out more specific exercises, we look at self-esteem. So pretty much everyone who's dealing with social anxiety badly, you know, it's a social anxiety disorder, there is a lowered self-esteem. So then it's a matter of, okay, what are the experiences that made you bad about yourself? Or how do you feel towards yourself? And those kinds of things.
And as you say that, as I think back to when I was working on my social anxiety, the way it felt was I felt like someone's little kid brother that mom was making the older kids let tag along. So it was like I was taking up space that I didn't deserve, and everybody was just tolerating me, and they're just putting up with me and just can't wait for me to leave. Like, and it wasn't true, but like that was the internal story, like what you're talking about there. Like that was the way that it felt in seeing what it was like navigating the world in that way, which is an esteem piece. Like, I don't deserve to have space here. You're only tolerating me because someone else says you have to.
Yep. So it's an esteem piece. And it's a big part self-acceptance, right? Like we've learned that we're okay when we're funny, intelligent, cool, interesting, etc. And we've rejected the parts of us that are uncool and boring and lame and, and so on. And
Right.
so a big part is accepting these feelings, accepting these parts of us, and also accepting certain feelings that you don't want to feel. So we've kind of come up with this perfect way that we want to be. I call it social perfectionism. I need to be this way. I have to be this way. Can't be this way. Can't be that way. And then we're trying to live up to that particular idealized image that we've made up of ourselves. And then we're not living up to those expectations. And these particular beliefs lead to not being able to flow in the moment. Because it's like, am I being smart? Am I being funny? I haven't said anything for a while. I'm coming across boring now. And that causes you to be in your head the whole time. And it causes you to filter everything that comes out of your mouth. Yeah. And so it just becomes this constant analysis when you're in a social situation. So that is another big area that we then focus on. Now, so it's a bit harder to explain exactly how do you address the social anxiety triggers, because it's like when I work with a client in the moment, it's just I work with whatever comes up, and right. And when we're in the club, we're dedicating particular months to big topics, and so self-esteem is a big topic, social perfectionism is a big topic. Self-acceptance is a big topic. And through focusing on these particular topics, you then work to improve your self-esteem, deepen your self-acceptance, and that kind of thing. Does that make it clear?
It makes sense. Yeah. And you said so leading into the self-esteem piece. So there are three categories. There is memories, beliefs, and negative fantasies, correct?
Yeah.
And so I can see, like, as we're trying to suss these particular things out, like, because I'm a super systematic person and I love figuring these things out in a piece of paper, I can see myself with that framework drawing 3 lines and literally putting memories, beliefs, and negative fantasies. And as I think about an experience where I was afraid in the past, or I think about something that's coming that is going to be fearful for me, going, okay, great. What does this remind me of? And seeing if there are any memories that are poking around in there. What am I afraid that's going to go wrong? Or I just like imagine it in my head and just seeing it go off the rails as we're navigating that thing, as a way to figure out what is going on, as a way of unpacking and finding our way to all of those things, so that we can then do what you're doing, kind of figure out where is the esteem piece? Where are these other things that are hiding inside of there?
Yeah.
And so someone has heard us talk about this at super high level, these 3 areas to look through, some stuff to do. Someone recognizes, okay, great, I want to start today. Where do they start? Like, what's kind of like as we're stepping into the shallow end of the pool to start working on this, what are the first couple of things you have someone do?
Sure. Is this person that's watching someone who's a tapping practitioner, or
everybody who we're talking to, someone who is tapping fluent? They're not necessarily a practitioner, but they're someone who doesn't need the basics of tapping. They know how to tap on their own. What would you be having that person do?
Probably the first step would be to, especially if they're dealing with social anxiety for a very long time, to help them dissociate themselves from the problem. So, they believe that they're a socially anxious person. They've typically, the people that I work with, they've been socially anxious for as long as they can remember. And so to them, it's just as normal as, having blue eyes or something.
Yeah.
And they feel like it's impossible to overcome this. This is who I am. So I would first open that up, because otherwise you're not going to see your client for the second time.
Yeah. So would you be willing to just kind of lead us through a round of tapping on something like that would look like?
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
And I will be the echo for you, and everybody tap along with us as we're doing this.
Right. Okay. All right. So just tapping the side of your hand. Even though I have this social anxiety issue,
even though I have the social anxiety issue,
and it's really difficult,
and it's really difficult,
and it's incredibly hard to deal with,
and it's incredibly hard to deal with,
I want to try to find a way to come to terms with it.
I want to try to find a way to come to terms with it.
Even though I have this social anxiety problem,
even though I have this social anxiety problem,
and I'm really ashamed of it,
and I'm ashamed of it,
and I'm afraid I'll never overcome it,
and I'm afraid that I'll never overcome it,
and it feels like I'm the problem,
and it feels like I'm the problem,
I want to accept where I'm at,
I want to accept where I'm at,
even though I'm dealing with this problem.
even though I'm still dealing with this problem.
Even though I'm still dealing with this problem.
Even though I'm still dealing with this problem.
And it's really, really tough.
And it is really tough.
And it really sucks.
And it sucks.
I'm willing to consider the possibility.
I'm willing to consider the possibility
that it might not be me who is the problem.
That it might not be me who is the problem.
Yeah, that I have a problem.
That I have a problem.
Yeah, and I want to try to accept myself.
And I want to try to accept myself.
At least a little bit more.
At least a little bit more.
At some point, maybe.
At some point, maybe.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
It's on the beginning of the eyebrows. I have this problem.
I have this problem.
So guys, I have social anxiety.
I have social anxiety.
On the eyes. I acknowledge that I have this problem.
I acknowledge that I have this problem.
On the nose. I'm dealing with this social anxiety issue.
I'm dealing with the social anxiety issue.
And I feel so ashamed of it.
I feel so ashamed of it.
Collarbone. It makes me feel like a loser.
It makes me feel like a loser.
Make me judge myself as weak.
It makes me judge myself as weak.
On the wrist point. And it feels like I can never get rid of this.
It feels like I can never get rid of this.
On the top of the head. I have this problem.
I have this problem.
On the beginning of the eyebrows. And it seems like. Say guys, this is who I am.
This is who I am.
That I'm a socially anxious person.
That I'm a socially anxious person.
I don't know. But what if that's not true?
But what if that's not true?
Chin, I've just felt it a lot.
I just feel it a lot.
Collarbone. And I have been feeling it a lot for a long time.
And I've been feeling it a lot for a long time.
On the arms. So it makes sense.
So it makes sense.
That it's been feeling like this is me.
That this feels like it is me.
And the top of the head. But what if that's not true?
But what if that's not true?
Beginning of the eyebrows. It's true that this is a problem.
It's true that it's a problem.
Side the eyes. But it's a problem that I have.
But it's a problem that I have.
On the eyes. What if it doesn't define who I am?
What if it doesn't define who I am?
On the nose. I have a problem.
I have a problem?
Chin, it's not that I am the problem.
It's not that I am the problem.
Collarbone. This problem really sucks.
This problem really sucks.
On the arms. But what if I am actually okay?
But what if I am actually okay?
On the wrist point. I have this really difficult problem.
I have this really difficult problem.
On the top of the head. And perhaps I can find a way.
And perhaps I can find a way.
To have a tiny bit of compassion for myself.
To have a tiny bit of compassion for myself.
As I begin to deal with this problem.
As I begin to deal with this problem.
Good deep breath.
So one of the things that you did in there that I really, really loved is when we were tapping on the side of the hand and we're making statements about moving forward and letting go of this, how it almost felt like if you're just looking at it from the outside, it looks like you're undercutting the progress by saying maybe, possibly, someday it might be. But from the inside out, where when we're struggling with something and we're asking ourselves to see ourselves in a different way, because I love the idea here that we're moving from this is an identity to this is something I'm experiencing, that changing our identity on a base level is a really hard thing. The subconscious mind doesn't want to change that. And so all of those caveats of it is possible someday, maybe I might believe it. Like, I find that to be such a good, useful way that like, I would rather have long-term lasting change than some quick fix that evaporates. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that's happened for me more and more in my practice when I'm tapping on my own and I'm tapping with my clients is going slower and going slower and going slower and being okay with that. Because when we're tapping, we're going faster than lots of other approaches to something like this. So if we're just comparing it to tapping on another issue, it feels like we're going slow, but everything else, it's going much quicker. And I love the slow gentleness of the beginning of this. And I love as we're tapping it, like, I'm open to the possibility I might recognize this thing, that we're not forcing the subconscious mind to believe something. We're saying,
Right.
hey, I appreciate where you're coming from. Have you considered this other alternative? And I think that's just such a more useful approach. Not only is it gentler and less emotional, but I think it's way more effective. And so I just really appreciate that was the tactic you took as we stepped into that.
Thank you. Yeah. I wish it was mine. I've stolen everything from everyone all over.
Of course, me as well.
Yeah, whatever works gets the job done. Yeah. But it's an acknowledgement of, one part was also I have social anxiety. A lot of people have not admitted that to themselves, even though that's it. So we're acknowledging that that's what's going on. We're recognizing some of this is just a start, of course, but we're recognizing some of the feelings that are going on. And you can't overcome yourself. So by tuning in or reframing, but I say reframing, but it's rather pointing out the reality that it's not something you are. You're not born with social anxiety. It's a problem you have developed. And so, what if it's something you can overcome? And actually, you're suffering. And so you deserve some compassion. If you think about someone that you really love, and this is an exercise I have them do sometimes, think about someone you really love. Imagine that they're having what you're dealing with, the worst of it. How would you feel towards them?
I love that. Because one of the as humans, one of the things that we're really good at is giving other people the benefit of the doubt when we are unwilling to do that for ourselves. Absolutely. Like we're consistently going, oh, it's so hard for them, I'm going to give them a pass. Where for us, it's like, oh, I got to be perfect and I got to figure this out all the time. And that is so human. And I love it. Just like even knowing that, again, that's something obvious. I talk about it all the time with my clients, but I love this idea of, great, I'm going to take off this problem and I'm going to put it on someone else. How would I respond to them? Oh, I deserve that same sort of response towards me. Like that's such a beautiful disassociation. You talked about the fact that everything you do, you stole from other people. I'm stealing that particular one. I love that as an image so much, and as a tool of getting us to go like, and I could almost see myself like, if I was doing it on my own, I would like see the other person as I'm tapping and as I'm responding to them. And for me in the visualization, I would just slowly see that person transform into me. So I already have this love and affection going towards them. And I'm just changing the target from this person I imagine having it to me having it in that particular way. That's such, I love that so much. It's such a beautiful way to think about it. Oh my gosh. Sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Sebastiaan. I just appreciate, anytime we get a chance to have a conversation, it's a beautiful thing. But like I said, there's so many little nuggets inside of that. I can't overcome myself. I'm overcoming a problem. That's another thing that I'm going to steal, that I'm going to be thinking a lot about as I'm figuring out how to implement in the work that I do. So thank you very much for your time, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It was fun.